Part 5. My Sea Adventure. Chapter 22. How I began my sea adventure. There was no return of the mutineers, not so much as another shot out of the woods. They had got their rations for that day, as the captain put it, and we had the place to ourselves and a quiet time to overhaul the wounded and get dinner. Squire and I cooked outside in spite of the danger, and even outside we could hardly tell what we were at for horror of the loud groans that reached us from the doctor's patients. Out of the 8 men who had fallen in the action, only 3 still breathed. That one of the pirates who had been shot at the loophole, Hunter, and the Captain Smollett. One of these, the first 2, were as good as dead. The mutineer, indeed, died under the doctor's knife, and Hunter, do what he could, never recovered consciousness in this world. He lingered all day, breathing loudly like an old buccaneer at home in his apoplectic fit. Apoplectic. But the bones of his chest had been crushed by the blow, and his skull fractured in falling, and sometime in the following night, without a sign or sound, he went to his Maker. As for the captain, his wounds were grievous indeed, but not dangerous. No organ was fatally injured. Anderson Ball, for it was Job that shot him first, had broken his shoulder blade and touched the lung, not badly. The second had only torn displaced some muscles in the calf. He was sure to recover, the doctor said, but in the meantime, and for weeks to come, he must not walk, nor move his arm, nor so much as speak when he could help it. My own accidental cut across the knuckles was a flea bite. Dr. Livesey patched it up with plaster and pulled my ears for me into the bargain. After dinner, the squire and the doctor sat by the captain's side a while in consultation, and when they had talked to their heart's content, it being then a little past noon, the doctor took up his hat and pistols, geared a cutlass, put the chart in his pocket, and with a musket over his shoulder, crossed the palisade on the north side and set off briskly through the trees. Gray and I were sitting together at the far end of the blockhouse, to be out of the earshot of our officers consulting, and Gray took his pipe out of his mouth and fairly forgot to put it back again, so thunderstruck he was at this occurrence. "Why, in the name of Davy Jones," said he, "is Dr. Livesey mad?" "Why, no," says I. "He's about the last of this crew for that, I take it." "Well, shipmate," said Gray, "mad he might not be, but he's not. You mark my words. I am." "I take it," replied I. "The doctor has his idea, and if I'm right, he's going now to see Ben Gunn." I was right, as appeared later, but in the meantime, the house being stifling hot and the little patch of sand inside the palisade ablaze with midday sun, I began to get another thought into my head. We watched not by any means so right. What I began to do was to envy the doctor walking in the cool shadow of the woods with the birds about him and the pleasant smell of the pines, while I sat grilling with my clothes struck to the hot resin, and so much blood about me, and so many poor dead bodies lying around, and took a disgust of the place that almost as strong as fear. All the time I was washing on the blockhouse, and then washing up the things for dinner, this disgust and envy kept growing stronger and stronger, till at last, being near a bread bag, and no one then observing me, I took the first step towards my escapade, and filled both pockets of my coat with biscuit. I was a fool, if you like, and certainly I was going to do a foolish, overbold act, but I was determined to do it with all the precautions in my power. The biscuits, should anything befall me, will keep me, at least, from starving till far on the next day. The next thing I let hold I was a brace of pistol that I was already had a powder horn and bullets. I felt myself well supplied with arms. As for the scheme I had in my head, it was not a bad one in itself. I was to go down the sandy spit that divides the anchorage on the east from the open side, find the white rock, and had observed last evening and ascertain whether it was there or not, the Dangoon has hidden his boat. A thing quite worth doing, I still believe. But as I was certain I should not be allowed to leave the enclosure, my only plan was to take French leave and slip out when nobody was watching, and that was so bad a way of doing it was made the thing itself wrong. And that was so bad a way of doing it as made the thing itself wrong. But I was not only a boy, I had made my mind up. Well, as things as last fell out, I found an admirable opportunity. The squire and Gray were busy helping the captain with his bandages. The coast was clear. I made a bolt for it over the stockade and into the thickets of the trees, and before my absence was observed, I was out of cry of my companions. This was my second folly, far worse than my first, as I left but 2 sound men toward the house. But like the first, I was helped toward saving all of us. I took my way straight for the sea coast of the island, for I was determined to go down the seaside to speed to avoid all chance of observation from the anchorage. It was already late in the afternoon, although still warm and sunny. As I continued to thread all the tall woods, I could hear from the far before me not only the continuous thunder of the surf, but a certain tossing of foliage and greening of boughs, which showed me the sea breeze and set higher than usual. Soon cool draughts of air began to reach me, and a few steps further I became forth the open borders of the grove, and saw the sea lying blue and sunny to the horizon, and the surf tumbling and tossing its foam along the beach. I have never seen quite round Treasure Island. The sun might blaze overhead, the air be without a breath, the surface smooth and blue, but still these great rollers will be running along the external coast, thundering and thundering, day by day and night. And I scarce believe there is one spot in this island where a man will be out of earshot of their noise. I walk along beside the surf with great enjoyment, till, thinking I was now got far enough to the south, I took the cover of some thin bushes and crept wildly up to the ridge of the spit. Behind me was the sea in front of the anchorage. The sea breeze, as though it had the sooner blown itself out, but its unusual violence was already at the end. It had been succeeded by light variable airs from the south and the southeast, carrying great banks of fog, and the anchorage, under the lee of Skeletal Island, lay still in leading as when first we entered it. The Hispaniola, in that unbroken mirror, was exactly portrayed from the truck to the water line, the Jolly Roger hanging from her peak. Alongside lay one of the gig's silver in the stern sheets. Him I could always recognize, while a couple of men were leaning over the stern bulwarks, one of them with a red cap, the very rogue that I had seen some hours before, straight legs upon the palisade. Apparently they were talking and laughing at that distance, upwards of a mile. I could, of course, hear no word of what was said. All at once there began the most horrid, unearthly screaming, which at first startled me badly, though I had soon remembered the voice of Captain Flint, and even though I could make out the bird by her pling-plumage as she sat perched upon her master's wrist. Soon after, the jolly boat shoved off and pulled for shore, and the man with the red cap and his comrade went below by the cabin companion. Just about the same time the sun had gone down behind the spyglass, and as the fog was collecting rapidly, it began to grow dark in earnest. I saw I must lose no time if I were to find the boat that evening. A white rock, visible enough above the bush, was still enough eighth of a mile further than the spit, and it took me a goodish while to get up with it, crawling often one all fours among the scrub. Night had almost come when I laid my hand on its rough sides. Right below it was an exceedingly small hollow of green tuff, hidden by banks and a thick underwood about a knee deep, the great there very plentiful, and in the center of the dell, sure enough, a little tent of goat skins, like what the gypsies carry about with them in England. I dropped in the hollow, lifted the side of the tent, and there was Ben Gunboat, homemade in ever anything was homemade. A rude, lopsided framework of tough wood, and rested upon that covering of goat skin with the hair inside. The thing was extremely small even for me, and I could hardly imagine that it could have floated with a full-sized man. There was one thwart set as low as possible, a kind of stretcher in the bows, and a double paddle for propulsion. I had not seen a coracle such as an angel Bristol made, but I have seen one since, and I can give you no further idea of Bengun's boat than by saying it was like the first and worst coracle ever made by man. But the great advantage of the coracle it certainly possessed, for it was exceedingly light and portable. Well, now that I have found the boat, you will have thought I had had enough of trentry for one's country. But in the meantime I have taken another notion, and become so obstinately fond of it, that I will have carried it out, I believe, in the teeth of Captain Smollett himself. This was to slip out under cover of the night, cut the Española adrift, and let her go ashore where she fancied. I had quite made up my mind that the mutineers, after the repulse of the morning, had nothing nearer their hearts than to up anchor and away to sea. This, I thought, it will be a fine thing to prevent, and now that I had seen how they left their watchmen unprovided with a boat, I thought it might be done with little risk. Down I sat to wait for darkness, and made a hearty meal of biscuit. It was a night out of 10,000 for my purpose. The fog had now buried all heaven, and the last rays of daylight dwindled and disappeared. Absolute blackness settled down on Treasure Island, and when at last I shouldered the coracle, I groped my way stumblingly out of the hollow where I had supped. There were but 2 points visible on the whole anchorage. One was the great fire of shore, by which the defeated pirates lay carousing in the swamp. The other, a mere blur of light upon the darkness, indicated the position of the anchored ship. She had swung round to the ebb. Her bow was now towards me. The only lights on board were in the cabin, and what I saw was merely a reflection in the fog of the strong rays that followed from the stern window. The ebb had already run some time, and I had to wade through a long belt of swampy sand, where I sank several times above the ankle before I came to the edge of retreating water, and wading a little way in, with some strength and dexterity, set my coracle keel downwards on the surface. A ver, sí, ya se graba, ¿no? Coracle. Stoccare. Stoccate. Barricade. Stoccate. Barricade. ¡Ay, qué frío! Ay. ¿Qué hay?